Hello, I promised to give updates on where we are with Hey Monica. And a couple of weeks ago, I took over as CEO of Hey Monica, which sounds like a fancy job title that I gave myself. But I'd really love to share with you some of the background and give you an update on where we are right now because there's a lot going on and we haven't been great at talking about it just because of time, really. And I think me explaining why this role has come about will be really helpful for understanding why that's had to happen and which sort of challenges it's going to overcome. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some updates on where we are right now with Hey Monica, what the software looks like, which scenarios and challenges we have in place, what we're building right now, what we're talking to our developers about building next, some of the conversations that we've had that you might be interested in. And I'm going to also invite you to share your ideas because we want to build this in public and I want to get as much feedback as possible about Hey Monica so we can make it really good for you. So I'm recording this on a Sunday. This is part of my effort to build in public, and so forgive the lack of makeup and everything, but I figured sometimes you just got to go out there and talk about what you're doing. So here we are. So Hey Monica, first of all, what is it? So we've built a piece of software which gives you a simulation of real life working in accounts. Now, this came about because we had lots of posts in our Facebook community, which has got 36,000 members, mainly with bookkeepers who wanted to become self-employed, and they were asking for work experience. Let me show you some of the comments that we've had that we have been trying to build this for, and then I'll show you about how we have evolved. So we were getting posts like this in our Facebook community from people who just needed more help with getting experience. And what we were generally seeing is people who have qualified, who couldn't get work because they didn't have experience yet. We had lots of people saying, I will work for you for free. I just need to build practical experience. Can I volunteer? And we were getting so many of these. I mean, you can see that this is people who are training as bookkeepers, people who've worked as accountants for years, people who are becoming self-employed. But the more we spoke about this challenge, the more we realized that this isn't just a work experience for sole traders problem or self-employed problem. This is a huge problem in the industry. I work with an amazing team of people. So it's not just me here. There are 6 founders in the business. So Joe Wood is my co-founder of the Six Figure Bookkeeper, and this is where this research started. But there are now 6 of us in the team, and here are another 2 of them, and Nicola here in the middle with Stuart. And also we work with Nadia Gibbs and Rebecca Williams. Now, what we have learned from the conversations that we've had outside of the self-employed space is that also training managers are really struggling to be able to get their people really ready to hit the ground running. And I think that partly comes down to the fact that technology does so much of the work now. So when you train as an accountant or a bookkeeper, and I did my accountancy training a long time ago. I started when I was 19 and I'm in my 40s now. So it was a long time ago. But the sort of textbook way of learning, the computerized exams or the written exams don't really simulate what it's like to be in an office. And because the technology does so much of the work, you might know the theory, but when you're actually faced with your accounting software or a client interaction, you don't really have the same work readiness skills to be able to be really valuable immediately. And I think that's frustrating for people who are going into the workplace. It's also frustrating for training managers. Joe and I have been hearing from the conferences that we've been going to for years that people are just struggling to find people who are really ready for work, who have that kind of experience. And I think that this is something that's really challenging to train through the sort of traditional exam route. And there are brilliant training providers out there. I actually retrained as a bookkeeper in 2016. And things had advanced massively, but I still felt that when I did the actual work, I didn't feel experienced enough to do that, despite having worked as an accountant for, I don't know, 15 years or something by then. So I think this is a massive challenge that we need to solve in the industry. And what we've learned as we've gone through building Hey Monica is that the the work that we need to help people to learn isn't necessarily the work that we thought we needed to help people with. So let me just give you a little sort of overview of where we are at the moment with Hey Monica. When we started out, we were thinking about that problem that the self-employed bookkeeper or accountant going into practice might have, and they wanted to have an experience of what it would look like end to end working with a client, and the client's going to tell you they need certain things, and then you're going to have to ask them for various pieces of paperwork, and then you're going to have to go into your software and understand what you have to do to get that right. So we started to build out scenarios where we would have fake clients. And what happens at the beginning is you get a sort of introduction video from that client. They give you some information about themselves. And then you have a conversation with them to ask them for the paperwork that you need, which is prompted for you by the Hey Monica platform. It's my little drawing of Hey Monica. And you've got some questions along here. You've got like various stages that you work through, and you need to answer those questions, and you obviously get them right or wrong. But while you're doing that work, you're going in, you're asking the client for this piece of paperwork, and you're doing that by having a conversation with the client. So you've got this kind of chat where you can send them a message and say, hey, I need this particular thing, and then they're going to send you the paperwork into the document vault. And then you'll go off into Xero or whichever software you're using, and you're going to complete that piece of work, and then you'll be able to tick which answer is correct to say that you've completed that piece of work, and it's going to give you a sort of pass or fail, and then you'll move on to the next question, and it works through. So you'll be going back to the client, asking for the paperwork, doing the work in your software, and then coming back and answering the question. That is great, and I think that gives you a really good experience of working with a client and the kind of things that they might be asking you for. But what we learned from speaking to Stuart Hurst in our team, who has a team, is that actually those scenarios might take quite a long time to be able to complete, because if you've got a sole trader doesn't always look the same. It looks like it could look like various different things, right? You could have a service providing sole trader, or you could have somebody who does e-commerce, or you might have somebody who's selling products at a market stall. And for the trainee to get like real experience of what it looks like to work through a sole trader, which could use all sorts of different systems, it's going to take quite a long time for them to hit the ground running. So with that in mind, what we started to do was build something called challenge mode, and challenge mode gives you experience at a beginner, intermediate and advanced level of working through specific challenges. So these are like technical accountancy skills, things that you would be expected to do in practice. So it might be a year-end working paper, and that might be an accounts payable or accounts receivable or PAYE or director's loan or whatever. So to know those particular tasks that you need to do at a beginner, intermediate and advanced level, so that when someone in your team says we need to produce this and it's for the accounts, you know what you're looking at. And we can start with the beginner stuff, we start with context, like why do we do this, and it's hopefully stuff that you've learned in your exams or you've come across before. But also when we get to like intermediate and advanced, we can give you more advanced scenarios of those, so more advanced experiences where there just might be more tricky things to sort of work out. So with beginner, we've started with kind of like best practice. This is what it looks like in an ideal world. We've given you all of the downloads from Xero, so you can see what you're working with. Like, you don't have to go and download the report or anything. It's there for you. It's like, here's a sample of what we're trying to produce. This is best practice. Here's your template. Go and fill it in. And then you can move on through those different levels. And then let's say you'd completed all of the challenges at beginning, intermediate and advanced, and you knew everything about AP, and then you were actually doing a working paper in real life. If you went to speak to your manager and say, actually, I've got this thing that's come up, you really do need them to sit down and give you some support, because we will have tried to cover as many of those kind of curveballs that can come your way when you're training. So the goal is to get people up to speed with specific real life like work experience tasks, working through that sort of beginner through to advanced pace. So we've started to build that out now. And if you go into the platform, you'll see that we've got lots of these. So let me show you. So I've logged into my Hey Monica account. When we get in, we get to this dashboard, and I'll tell you something about this a little bit later. But if I click on these buttons on the left, I've got access to all of my scenarios. So these are the clients that you go through end to end. So Adele is our poster girl, I suppose. And when you log in, you have a client profile, you get some information about her business, and then you work through these various stages on the left hand side to complete her accounts up to trial balance. So she actually isn't using Xero, so we have to go through a process of setting up Xero, importing the bank statement, and you can see that this is why you might not have time for your trainees to be able to go and do this. But if you're self-employed or you're training at the moment and you want to see that workflow, this is a really valuable way to see what it's like to work with a client. We go in and talk to the client at various stages. So if I want Adele's bank statement, I say, can you send me your bank statement? And she's going to find the bank statement and tell me that she's dropped it in the document vault. And this is how we share documents with the client. It starts empty, and as we work through, she adds documents in there for us, so then I can download the bank statement and work through it, just to show you that building up. Actually, if I later on in the scenario, I need to ask her for her sales invoices, and then she can drop them in for me, and you'll see that they get added into the document vault. So if I go into that vault, it's building up with the paperwork that I need as I work through, and then I can go in and I can import them into HubSpot, or however I'm going to get them into HubDoc, or however I'm going to get them into Xero. So I work through, I answer the questions, I move on to the next stage. So I'm going in here to give me my activity, then I'm going into my software to do the work. I might be asking Adele for paperwork, and sometimes I need help, so I can watch a help video or I can download a help document. And sometimes I need some technical advice from Monica, who's like my mentor sat next to me. And if I need Monica to help me with, I don't know, a technical thing that's come up, or is the client allowed to claim for this expense, I can ask Monica to help me with that as well. So that's how scenarios work. When you get to the end, you get like a pass or fail message. But what we've tried to do now with challenge mode is chunk this up. So we've got all of these beginner scenarios at the moment. So you can see I've completed my VAT account working paper. It starts with some training from our current avatar we're using for Monica. We actually, you will love to know this, we can't animate at the moment our Monica purple logo mascot. I want her to be able to talk. I can't find an AI tool that will give me a consistent output at the moment. So we don't have a budget for someone to animate this stuff for us. So we're working with these sort of talking heads. But you get a bit of instruction and introduction to why we need to do this particular working paper, reconciling the VAT account. It tells us what files we're going to have access to. And then I go through and answer various questions as I'm working through. Because this is slightly different, we don't need to ask the client for anything in a challenge. We're just trying to work out how do we build up that working paper as we go through. We don't have a talk to the client, but you can always talk to Monica. And if we have to share, if we need documents, those documents are actually available at the beginning. So we've got a blank working paper. We've got the VAT return, we've got the balance sheet, so we've got the paperwork we need. And as you work through the scenario, it tells you what to do next. I'm going to tell you something about what's sort of developing here in a moment. So that's where we are with the product right now. But I'd like to tell you about what's happening behind the scenes, because you might not know what's happening because we haven't been talking about it enough. So let me tell you about that. I'm going to show you behind the scenes. Actually, we've got something, our content management system is where we do all of the work behind the scenes. So the team are constantly looking at which challenges and scenarios do we need to build next, and what do we need to make available. So we have a lot of this sort of in production at the moment, and I can give you a bit of a sneak preview. We have just reviewed the way that we're building challenges, and I'm going to tell you about that. But first of all, I want to let you know about a new feature that's just been released. So I'm back in Hey Monica. You can see my challenge mode. We've just released a video feature. So those questions that you saw that we were answering as we were working through, we're going to be upgrading our questions so that it's much more interactive. So I'm going to go into accounts payable, because I know this is the live product that you can see right now. We start, as I said, with a video from Monica, and then we have some information. And what we have the option to do now is add in video questions. So the questions that you've seen are text-based questions, but what we're now able to do is add videos in at every stage in the as you're working through any challenge. So we have a video here, and because the challenges are very much about building your knowledge and then helping you to apply that and build out, in this instance, a working paper, we have Monica telling you this is what you're going to do next. So she's actually going to talk you through what you need to do. And I think that's really helpful for setting the scene and also just making this look a bit more interesting. Now, what is really exciting to me here with the video feature as well as it just looking better, is that when we get over to our scenarios, we can now put videos in where the client can send you a WhatsApp message or share a document with you, and it's going to look much more realistic rather than just reading text. So watch this space. This is quite a lot of work, because what we have to do in our content management system, and this is just my view sort of behind the scenes, but we have to go in and actually change the question types that we have. So we build it out like this. And if you see these questions, we've got these single choice questions, and we have to go in and we've got to change them all to be video type questions and upload videos and things like that. So this is a video with text. So I've gone through and updated this set of videos here so that they're in there, but it does mean removing all of the single choice questions and then setting up the new format. So there's quite a bit of work for us to do. We've got the videos. At the moment, actually, those videos are living in the help section. So if I go in and preview it, for the questions that don't have a video in there at the moment, what happens instead is those videos, I don't think I'm going to be able to find any here because I've embedded them all, but in these ones you'll find that they sort of flash up in the watch help videos, and you'll be able to see them behind the scenes there. So we've just got to move where they live. It's just a bit of admin work for the team. Really exciting. So the other thing I wanted to let you know is that we're looking at, on the basis of feedback that we've received about the tasks that you need to learn when you are a trainee. Some feedback that we got from an employer we went to visit, Kennedy Accountancy. Karen Kennedy runs Kennedy Accountancy up in the Highlands, and she said she has a lot of apprentices working with her, trainees at different stages, and she was talking to me about taking on an apprentice straight from school. Now, obviously the challenge when you're straight from school or you're right at the beginning of your training is that you don't necessarily have any accounts experience at all. So something that we need to work on is how do we fill that gap between being a school leaver and being ready to get into a workplace. And I think this is so much bigger than here's how to produce a working paper. So what we've been working on over the last couple of weeks is building out building out challenges that look like this. So we're thinking about like the world of business and what do you need to know just to get ready for work. So this one is in it's almost ready to go at the moment. You can see we've got to add this sort of about the activity. I'm just going to resume and see where I'm up to. And we've got these video questions embedded, as you can see, but we start with things like business entities, like what do we need to know about what's the difference between a sole trader and a limited company and a partnership. So we go through and answer these questions, and then we move on. And we've got that first video in the section is sort of setting the scene for a series of questions, which I'm just going to click through just to move on. And then we move into making money. How do businesses make money? What's revenue? What are costs? What's the difference between a direct cost or a cost of sale and an overhead? What does profit really mean? How do people take money out of business? And then we've also got a section about accountancy roles and how different roles can look, whether you're working in practice or if you're working in a finance team within a larger entity, and maybe you've got a more specialized role. So we want to just sort of create that awareness of what the opportunities are when you have your accounting qualification. So we're building things like this out right now. I've had lots of ideas and feedback from people who are saying, well, we also need to know this and this and this. Even things like, how do you write an email? Somebody said, I was quite intimidated the first time I wrote an email. And that's a really good point, which does bring me on to something else that we're working on in terms of feature development. So I'll let you know about those as well. To give me accountability to make sure that this is a weekly thing. We've got quite a lot of meetings in the diary in the next few weeks around training. As you've seen, we thought we were creating Hey Monica to help the self-employed market, but actually we've learned that there is a massive challenge in practice. And I think right now that we're building this for employers and to bridge the gap between the exams and the training and the actual workplace. And we've been having lots of great conversations with training providers and colleges and professional bodies. So in the next week, we've got meetings with ICS Learn and Training Link, who support with a lot of the bookkeeping qualifications. We're also meeting with AAT soon. And one thing that I want to make sure we can do is map those challenges that we have and the awareness of the concepts around what is it, accounts payable, for example, what is the VAT account. I want to map all of this to the qualifications, the different levels of qualifications, because one of the questions we get is this scenario, or is this challenge equivalent to level 2 or level 3, or where should I start? And if we can make that clearer, it's going to be much better for usability. So we're working on how do we tie those syllabuses to syllabi, I don't know, to the levels that we have within our scenarios, because at the moment those scenarios have been built by, I have had an experience of working with a client like this is the kind of stuff they were giving me that I was confused about. Let's go and build a scenario or a challenge so that somebody using Hey Monika will never have that challenge again. Let's make sure they've learned that before they face it. And actually I think we can be much more structured in the way that we do this. So that's something that we're working on at the moment. The next development that I want to tell you about, which I'm super excited about, and I suppose there's a few things. Like when I think about what's coming next, I think about this in terms of challenges that we're building, scenarios that we're building, and then feature development. And just to be really clear, we don't have investment. We have funded this from investments by the shareholders, a 6-figure bookkeeper, and then revenue that we're generating from subscriptions to Hey Monika, we're then reinvesting back into the development sprints. So this has been built very much on what's the priority here to make this work? And I think we have a really good infrastructure right now where we can put a lot of content into Hey Monika, and we can provide great training experience now without too much build, which is good from a cash point of view. But the thing that I'd really like to see, when you saw me speaking to a client earlier when I was speaking to Adele, let me talk to you about how that's going to change. So I'm back in scenario mode. I'm going to go into this one with, I've been told that her name is Selena, and she's an MTD, or she's a client who needs to move over to MTD. So she's going to be mandated from April, and we've got to have quite a challenging conversation with her actually about why she needs to do this. As you can see, we haven't embedded videos in here yet. That will come. But at the moment, when we talk to the client, we click on this button and we send it. Really, the goal here is to get paperwork from the client. There are questions that come up with Selena when she is quite resistant to signing up for HMRC, where we need to choose the right answer to her, to give her in that, here, for example, what's the most accurate response? So this is about tax payments. You're not going to have to pay HMRC every quarter. It's just that you're going to do this submission, and she's convinced her spreadsheet has enough information and she is resisting moving over to software. What should you do? Obviously we're going to remind her that it's mandatory and she has to meet it, and that it becomes a bit more complex after this in terms of what do you do in this situation when the client says they're not going to use the software. But wouldn't it be great in this scenario particularly if you could speak to the client on the phone, and she's convinced that her spreadsheet provides enough information. So I'm imagining that she's pretty frustrated and annoyed, and she's going to be one of those clients that's going to be quite difficult to speak to on the phone. Now, there are some great tools on the market. One of them is called Delphi. I'm going to show you in the screen. .ai. And in this software, you can speak to all of these various people about whatever you want. So they have basically cloned people with their knowledge, and you can have a sort of voice conversation. And a while ago, I cloned myself to see what it would be like if I had a conversation with myself. I really wanted to show you, but it seems I don't pay for an account, so my clone's obviously not there anymore. But what happened, and this is obviously different to what we're doing, Hey Monica, but you could pull your information from online. Obviously, you have to agree and consent to doing this and have an account and everything. I think I even had to verify who I was to be able to do it, but I could have a conversation with me, and I'd read a script so that it had my voice as well, so it was posher than me. But you could have a conversation with it. Now, this got me thinking about, wouldn't it be great if you could have a conversation with one of these fake clients? And what we would like to do is this. Let me show you on a screen. So imagine if you're working through the scenario, and let me get my pen working here. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, you're working through your scenario and you have got to talk to the client. So we have this little button down here and you speak to the client. And at the moment it pops up with this window where you just type your text in. But what if instead of typing your text in, you had like a phone? This is an old retro phone. You could like phone your client and you could have a chat with them, like an actual voice conversation. And I think that should be the default, because I think one of the challenges that we have at the moment is that it is quite I think it's quite intimidating to actually call a client. So the way I see this is that we would have like you doing the scenario, you're speaking to your client and you're sort of going backwards and forwards. And I guess there are certain points at which the client would release information. So if I was asking for an invoice, a list of invoices or a bank statement or something, the client would still drop that in the document vault. But I'd have to ask by default on the phone, like through voice. Now, if you've used Duolingo, you'll see that on Duolingo, if you can't speak or listen right now, you have a button that you can press, so that that just says can't speak or can't listen right now, and then you could go back to, rather than the default being the voice conversation, you could go back to having this sort of exchange. Sorry, they're not fish, they're chat, but you could go back to having this exchange by doing a sort of messenger chat. But I feel like the messenger chat isn't really very realistic in terms of like what that actual client experience looks like. So this talk to client for me isn't good enough. It isn't realistic enough, and it is fine and does the job. But in an ideal world, I would press a button and I would speak to Selena, and then she could push back and the AI could be trained on what she wants to say. Building off of that, just going back to here, if me and the client, or the user and the client, are having a conversation, wouldn't it be great if Monica, who is sitting over here, sorry, really bad drawings, what if Monica was kind of listening, and at the end of the conversation, she was able to, on the results page, because at the end you get a score, how you did, whether you passed or failed. But wouldn't it be great if at the top of that box on the results screen, Monica also could give you feedback on what was right and wrong, or in terms of your conversation, like some talking points for next time, or things you might want to improve for next time, maybe in terms of your tone, but also in terms of content and accuracy and hesitation and assertiveness and things like that. So we're thinking, first of all, we want to build out this interaction between you and the client. But I think if we're doing that, we should look at whether we can get Monica to interject. I don't think she can interject, she would be really annoying. But I think if Monica could, like we had a transcript of that conversation, Monica could then give you some feedback at the end, which would help you as a user to improve your sort of communication techniques. Is there something else there? There is something else there. What I think we could also do, if we're doing that piece of work on the conversation, is move from, rather than having this chat style conversation where you're typing in the chat, we could move to having this box as a format, so you have to write it as an email, because realistically when you speak to a client, you're not messaging them over a sort of, it looks to me a bit like Facebook Messenger. You don't use something like Facebook Messenger. What you actually do is you write, "Hi Selena, hope you're having a great week, just reminding you that I need XYZ." So I think we should be writing this in the format of an email. So if we're doing this voice note, the voice conversation part, I think that this piece will come in. I have no idea how much this is going to cost. So I'm waiting for a quote right now. I've spoken to the developers about it last week. So that's in progress. The other thing that we have in progress is where we have team licenses and we have a few users who are teams. We want to be able to give our team managers insight into how their users are doing. So just so you know, it's £50 a month plus VAT to be an individual user of Hey Monica. If you sign up for a team license, it's £100 plus VAT per month for up to 5 users. So we want the team manager to have insight into which scenarios and challenges their team members have tried and how they've got on, because then they might be able to give more support. So obviously that's something in progress. But and I think and we have some of the data in terms of when we started a scenario, when a scenario or a challenge was finished, and I don't think it matters how many hours or minutes it took, because real life doesn't really work like that. Real life, particularly with AI and technology, we really want to know it took them 2 weeks, or it took them, like, they've been trying to do this one for 8 months. You want to see that kind of insight. So we're working on that. How do we get those scores out and delivered to the team user, like team license holders? But also, what I would like to do, and actually that's another point in terms of signing up team users. At the moment, it's quite a manual process. This is how we build it, right? It's just you got to see these things. But if we are producing that insight, and let's say a user starts a scenario or challenge, wouldn't it be good? And this was something that came up when I spoke to Kennedy Accountancy and the team. Wouldn't it be good to have that, like that kind of feeling of being in an environment where there's a deadline and you're managing multiple things, because that's what real life is like. So you might actually have 5 jobs going on at the same time, for example. So imagine if you could give yourself a deadline when you start a scenario. Let me show you what I mean. So I think it would be cool if, when you started, let's say I start this one with Fred's socials, and right at the beginning of the scenario, I've got some info about, this is how it looks, got info about Freddie. There's a video where he introduces himself, I hope. Is that playing okay? There he is. So we get all this information about Freddie, but then maybe right at the beginning, we have an option to say, what's your deadline for completing this task? Now, if we put a deadline in, what we could do then is, on the dashboard where you have a list of your recent scenarios, things that are in progress, things that you've completed. Sometimes I complete things, but often I'm demoing, which is why all of mine are in progress. But imagine if it told me the deadline. Imagine if it said this was due in 21 days. And then maybe I got emails sent to me reminding me that I only had 7 days left to go or something. Those kind of things I think could make it feel really realistic. And also from a sales point of view, that's obviously good for retention, because you're going to see people wanting to make sure they complete the scenarios and things like that. So I'm really curious about how we can build something like that. So I think that's all. There's absolutely loads going on. I suppose the thing I haven't spoken about is why I'm here doing this. I think that Joe Wood and I run Six Figure Bookkeeper, which it has been running for 6 years. I think it's going really well. We sell business training, and we also partner with a number of software providers and support them with getting in front of our community and sharing what's happening for them, because obviously these features help our community. And we've both been, I suppose, trying to kind of run Hey Monica with support from the rest of the team, but everyone has another business, everyone has something else going on, and it's been challenging. We've been running for a year. We launched in February 2025, and we had 48 signups, I think, on the first day. So we knew at that point, I think up until that point, we just thought, oh, this is a bit of fun, let's just see what happens. But we knew at that point that we actually had to get on with it, and we did have to build the software. Like, we were prepared, all of us were prepared to walk away if it didn't work out. But that showed us that people want to be part of this. They need it. There's a real need. So we have both been kind of trying to lead and also lead Six Figure Bookkeeper, which has been challenging because as you know, you get pulled into the day-to-day thing, which is why training and studying and exams, it's hard to get this extra thing done unless you make it a real priority. And we decided we were on a business event. We were at a business event a couple of months ago, and someone said something about just doing one thing, and we were like, yeah, we know one of us has to lead Hey Monica and one of us has to lead 6FB. So we knew naturally that the right fit was that Jo would go ahead, lead Six Figure Bookkeeper. She's got this brilliant success story of building her own practice from a kitchen table and selling it, and building it to multi six figures, and that's what our audience want to hear about. So she's the perfect person to go in and do that. And I suppose out of the two of us, I'm the more techie person, and I'll talk about it another day. But I think if I go back to my sort of origin story and my own experiences of what accountancy as a qualification did for me social mobility wise, this is something I really, really care about getting right. And I am prepared to go all in. Now that obviously, we have two businesses. Moving one key person, if I want to call myself that, out of Six Figure Bookkeeper is a huge risk for us, and for me to come in and run this business that frankly just about makes enough money to pay for the next development sprint every time, right? So we have big goals. We think this solves a huge problem, but we need somebody who's dedicated to building the content out and making sure that this sort of moves along. And the team are amazing. Rebecca obviously has a huge audience through her YouTube channel, Miss Finance Tutorials. She talks about training all the time. She's very, very technical. We've also got Stuart, who is running his own practice. He has been an absolute, he's a much, much, much better accountant than me. So in terms of his practice knowledge and real understanding of what he wants things to look like, that is so valuable for building out the scenarios and the challenges and what kind of context we need to be including. Nadia has been a trainee fairly recently, having changed industry. She did a completely different job before she retrained as a bookkeeper. She knows what it's like to be a trainee. She is the ultimate person to go in and test the new scenarios and challenges that we have. And she is so passionate about this, and she's mentoring other people herself now. So, she knows that there's this real need here. And then I feel like Nicola is my finisher. She always shows up. She's got great ideas, but her attention to detail is impeccable, and she's somebody who has worked in software as well, so she understands what we need to do from a quality assurance point of view, which has been really, really valuable. So the team are amazing, but the team don't all have time to go off and just build a piece of software in their free time, because free time is always limited. So I'm here to speak to the development team, speak to you guys, speak to our users, customers, potential customers, people who aren't a customer anymore, training providers, teams. If you've got ideas, feedback, thoughts, things you'd like to see included, what we can improve, I'm so ready to hear it. So reach out. I'll share my diary link and we can have a chat. But this is my commitment to share weekly what's going on, because I think it's important to keep talking about it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.